we say we can do it, we do it. So the state likes the fact that we do what we say we're going to do, and we can account for every dollar.
Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota. Today I'm speaking with Bob Marshall, the General Manager of Pluma Sierra Rural Electric Cooperative and also the Pluma Sierra Telecommunications Company, which is the subsidiary of the electric co-op. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
I'm very excited to talk with you. I just we touched base earlier this week for the first time, although I was a little bit familiar with some of the work that you've already done that we'll touch on. And the thing that I loved was you just immediately were saying that when it comes to California, you're pretty much interested in your co-op and ANZA in terms of what they're doing for broadband. When you and I are very much on the same page in terms of that love of the co-ops. And let me just ask you, where did that come from?
It's funny. California has so few electric co-ops. I had heard about them once at Berkeley. That's it, once. And I was working at a municipal utility, Palo Alto, and someone had said there was a job up here and applied for it. We drove over a certain pass and said, "Oh my God, humans live here." It's beautiful. There wasn't any jobs at the time. It's sparse but beautiful. And I read a book called The Next Greatest Thing. It was the 50-year anniversary of the co-op movement. And it's a coffee table book, and I cried in it. It was just like, this is how humans should do stuff. And so I got the job as member services director, which is a broad portfolio of everything nobody else wants, energy services, et cetera. And then ended up being hey, that's a satellite dish. You want to be involved? And I volunteered, and it ended up eventually I became manager after some interesting years. So it really was just the model of the co-op model of we can do it if we band together, just really inspired me.
Excellent. So the electric co-op is something that everyone knows about, and it generally goes back to the Roosevelt years in terms of their history. But tell us about how Pluma Sierra got into telecommunications.
My wife and I moved up from the Bay Area, and we're delighted. And we rented a house in this little town of Kronberg. It's population 200. There was one radio station. There was no TV at all. And it was one of those like, there's not a single service here. So this area is just beautiful. And I loved it. And parents used to have a cabin in the woods. And it's like, yay. Oh my God, there's no services. So when all the co-ops banded together and formed the National Rural Telecommunication Cooperative, I started trying to strike deals to offer C-band services, DirecTV. So it became an opportunity for me to say, we could really provide value to the community, but also have the community care that we're a co-op. It was the 50-year anniversary. And all the people who started the co-op under Roosevelt were all dying. I mean, like literally, I was getting interviews at the 50-year anniversary, people who weren't around 3 years later. Mm-hmm. And so it really became hey, we need to make the co-op matter. And it was a great opopportunity.
Now, you might laugh at me, but for people who aren't familiar with where Plumas and Sierra counties are, California is freaking huge. I think if you're in Sacramento and you if you fly east toward Nevada, just before you hit the state line, you're more or less in the right area. Is that right?
Vaguely, and it's Highway I-80 goes northeast up to Reno, and we are north of Truckee by about an hour. Yeah, it's not too far past where the Donner Party stopped for the winter. Yeah, so we're northwest of Reno, all along, right on the border. There's two co-ops, one up in the corner of the state, and us, Plumas, Lassen, and Sierra counties. Mount Lassen's in our county. So we're north of Lake Tahoe, north of Truckee, northwest of Reno.
Okay, so you got involved when the other electric co-ops were starting to look at this, but when did you start doing fiber optic services? Presumably first for electric side stuff, but then how did you get into more using that for broadband for residents and businesses?
So we did DirecTV, and we made very good money. It was very popular all across the country, and we jumped into the internet. and we did dial-up. So we grew very organically from dial-up to then some wireless with a company, then our own wireless went okay. Then did satellite internet on what was Wild Blue, became Viasat, became Exceed. I've lost track what the official name is these days. We were very big into that, and we actually served a lot of the country. And then we applied for in the Recovery ARRA stimulus fund. We applied, and we didn't get the last mile grants. We got the mid-mile grant. So it was very important because AT&T couldn't give us any more T1 lines. We literally had 6 megs of backhaul for our wireless, and Frontier was charging us some outrageous amount of money. And so we got the grant. We had to have 6 board meetings in 6 weeks to bring the board along. When you catch the bus, what do you do with it? So we went for it. And that's what sort of launched the modern version, which is into fiber optic.
When people are trying to envision this, it's mostly forest land. I feel like it's a lot of small towns connected by roads that are probably beautiful drives, but not exactly a lot of land that's available in between the areas that are settled. Or do people live all throughout there, or it's hard to tell from above?
Yes, and it's a real interesting mix. You've got big valleys. There's a giant flat. There used to be lakes, actually, and they filled in, and Tahoe's twin sister, literally, is there. So you have valleys that are a lot of ag and should stay ag. You have lots of national forest. Then you've got a lot of private land. So it's definitely a mix, lots of 5 and 10 acre parcels. I'm on one of those. Little compact towns from the old days, little railroad towns, a lot of those. So real mixed 2-lane highways. And so you go from deep timber to the west to high desert to the east. And we do a little bit of Nevada, which is definitely high desert. Burning Man's only 50 air miles east of us, not even 40 air miles east of our system, though many a mountain range.
Now, the way you described, though, sounds painful to serve. So what is your mix of services that you use to try and deliver people service for today?
The first grant was for a fiber optic backbone that went to the hospitals, went to the county seats, both Lassen County, Plumas County, and then the city in one town in Sierra County. So we had wireless. We used this to beef up our wireless system and increase speeds. As we had thought we'd be a mid-mile provider, because AT&T, Frontier, the cable TV companies all said, hey, this will be, great, we'll buy it from you. They were kidding us.
You weren't the only one.
Yes. And it's really, what hit us was, especially in AT&T country, which is about half our territory. And people started saying, that's great. I'm glad you got the high school and the hospital now have fiber optic for telemedicine. When are you getting to my house? And we would say, you have to understand, that was a mistake.
It'd be really great if you understood.
We're going to try for some more grants. And so about 2 annual meetings, and co-ops have annual meetings that are part carnival, part business meeting. And we're explaining to the crowd about the grants, and a familiar voice goes, when are you getting to our house? And I sat down, and the board president goes, ain't that your wife? And it's like, yes, it was. And the next year, we were trying to drive the cable TV companies buy from us, and they started to. And board president gets up and just says, don't worry, I know you're all yelling at us. We're going to get to everybody. I'd written his speech, and I had not put that in his speech. It was like, and the board started looking at each other like, we didn't vote on that. But the crowd, people would start, in a lot of co-ops that weren't desirous of being in the business, people were going to start running for boards if we didn't start providing the service. And so we started doing pilot programs with fiber optic in subdivisions and see what the take rate was and, do modest sized gambles. We've stuck with wireless for the big valleys. I mean, there can be a ranch with 2,000 acres and one house. So using fiber there is going to be rough unless we get continued grants. So we do wireless, and we're hitting 100 megs there. And then we bought a cable TV company, went defunct, and we bought it for pennies, and literally $4 for 4 different chunks on the sheriff's steps. The pole position is made it valuable. The system runs like garbage, and we turn parts of it on, and it runs okay for coax and through DOCSIS 3.0. But eventually we're going to tear it all down and put up fiber optic. So it became a mixed bag. Eventually we'll be wireless in the most remote areas, and then we're quietly working to make more and more of it fiber optic.
Now, I think you just recently got some really good news in terms of grants to help you make some of these investments. Can you share what's happening there?
At the California Public Utilities Commission has given us just shy of $23 million of grants to get to very specific areas. It's an interesting puzzle piece in that it's carved out census blocks. So they say you get money to serve these 20 homes, but not those. And it's interesting, the CPUC is tired of being yelled at by people who are bypassed, because other recipients will go to the grant recipients only. And then they don't bother serving the people who they went down the street. Mm-hmm. And the CPUC seems to like what we're doing because we usually come in under budget. When we say we're going to do something, we're going to do something. The board of directors is, are you going to meet the deadline? So, and I think the agencies, state and federal, are all sick of, give me the money, in RDOF, for example. Oh, I have no idea how I'm going to serve there. Whereas if we say we can do it, we do it. So the state likes the fact that we do what we say we're going to do. And same with ANZA, the other co-op down south in broadband. ANZA's the same way. ANZA does what it says it's going to do, and we can account for every dollar, because I can still account for the original construction in 37. Co-ops right. have extremely good bookkeeping, because if you don't, when you take federal money and you're an electric co-op, people get grumpy if you didn't do what you said.
They get grumpy and they send out people that have handcuffs, right?
Yes, exactly. Our first general manager in 38 had that problem. Oh. So
lesson learned. Now,
yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the California program works. It's not like they just like, oh, it's going to cost you $10,000 to do this home. Here's $7,500. You cover the rest. Their grants, I think, are 100% of the cost for the areas that they're targeting. Is that right? Am I wrong about
that? For the current grants. Previous grants, they were a mixed bag. We got some in 2019 for construction in 2020 that were mostly 90 and a few 100%ers. So we put up some of our own funds to match it. A grant last year, and then these are all at 100%.
Right, but then you have to put in your own money then to connect those others who are not part of that the layout plan or in the area that they're served.
Yeah, and we do that, and the electric utility, we both will invest for the 5-year payback. You have to get a fast turnaround with telecom, but also for electric will build SCADA control lines. They'll put 72 count down to a substation, and we'll route it appropriately and loop it if we can, and then rent to the subsidiary, who then sells to the customers. And that way it helps with capital. The rural utility service is okay with that as long as its primary function is electric. But electric loves to upgrade and run a modern grid, but you just can't invest millions and not raise rates. So renting out the surplus capacity to the subsidiary is a way to make the electric utility whole and get to the rest of our member owners who aren't on the grant. Sometimes it's just a matter of, well, how come I got to pay $300 and that guy got 99? Well, the grant paid for him and no one's paying for you. You got to, hook up. So it's a hybrid, and it works. It's been working. Our biggest concern really is enough manpower to get the job done without hiring so many people that we have to lay them off when we're done.
Yeah, the classic, I think it was the guinea pig moving through the snake problem. Some people don't like that visual. I've gotten comments on that.
It's okay. I have quite a dark sense of humor, so I think it's great.
Now, the one of the challenges that you have right now is a part of your territory, or else right next to it is the Dixie area where the Dixie fire was, right? What happened there?
So we serve sort of the leftovers and remnants, and just north of us is the Feather River Canyon, and it's a staircase of PG&E hydro plants. And PG&E, Cal Fire has now finally said it was PG&E. I'm not sure PG&E has agreed with them. It burned, it crossed the Sierra. It ended up being from one end to the other end, which is apparently there's only been 2 fires, and Caldor Fire was the other one in history that ever made it over the top. It burned through several communities. Greenville, Canyon Dam, Indian Falls, especially, all took a real beating. And then it burned in and around the northern part of our county as well, like Almanor, Chester, Westwood. It burned around them, so they're able to save the towns. Fire burned, and we had something else called the Beckworth Complex that knocked down our system for a week on a whole chunk of our system. The Dixie Fire burned through our lines, but pretty minor compared to the town of Greenville, for example. So an awful lot of infrastructure burned down, and what we're seeing is that an awful lot of people moved away, and they evacuated. Mm-hmm. And without broadband, looks like there's a real concern that we'll never be able to attract people back to that region. Some of the resort towns, yes, but again, resort towns, you have service economy jobs, and there's both an opportunity and a problem in the recovery from the Dixie Fire.
One of the things that I had originally said to you was I understand that most things are going underground, and you said underground is not a help in some of these cases because the fire actually destroyed some of the underground stuff as well.
For me, undergrounding, that's a bit of a nuance there. So when PG&E is going back, they are undergrounding along like Highway 89, obscure highway that but it's built into the crust of the earth. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is interesting digging, and it's in granite a lot of times. So, or else there's just, chunks of granite in the middle of your ditch that don't have a bottom, the mantle, I guess. So the problem is that
gets wet down there.
Yeah. So the problem you've got is that PG&E is digging this insanely expensive ditch. And what they say, you say, "Hey, we'd like to join you." They say, "Great, this is going to be about $160 a foot, so we'll split it with you."
Right. That's always the question: is like, do you have the extra costs or half of the costs?
Right, and that's the thing, and that's a political issue. So from that side of it, if it's undergrounding everybody, there's lots of people in, that's not a bad situation. Or if you're on the valley floor in Indian Valley, which is what Greenville's in that burned, once you're in the valley, it's dirt and it's not bad digging. So the problem is, when PG&E is building overhead, that it's an opportunity. It's not a fast opportunity, but you can follow their poles and go. And so it's really finding a good path to this community, these communities, and building cost effectively to them, or having someone else build to them, and then we do last mile. That's going to be the real challenge up there.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was someone else who told me. My understanding was some of the stuff in conduit burned under the fires. Like being underground didn't help at all.
Haven't heard. That wasn't me. Have not heard.
Well, then maybe I dreamed it. Maybe we shouldn't be spreading rumors.
Well, the problem is, it's Frontier plays it. The big guys play it close to the chest. And I had thought in the canyon, it's quite possible in town, because they did underground in Greenville, and some of that conduit may have, especially the weak point, junction boxes. Mm-hmm. Stick 6 inches up in the air, and it's hot enough, you're going to be melting. You might be okay with the runs that are 18 inches down, but you're not going to be okay at the junction boxes. So it wasn't me. For me, underground is better, and it's, we would have been very happy if we had undergrounded our original era grant.
Back when labor was more affordable.
Yes. Well, and it's like, but the problem with grants, the other thing you get into though is that NEPA and CEQA.
Right.
And it's when we took the grant, we were going through several hundred miles of, a few 100 miles of Forest Service, roughly speaking. And the selling point, we got a Cat X, categorical exclusion, that was no shovel needs to hit the ground for us to attach to our poles that run through the Forest Service. And that let us make the deadlines. And so overhead's fast. Overhead doesn't disturb the soil. You don't need NEPA and CEQA usually. And so, yay, you can go fast. And that's the same problem we're having staring at North Plumas County. Overhead's fast, underground safer and more expensive.
Yes. The other thing that I feel like you may have hit the jackpot a little bit on is it looks like as California is putting billions of dollars into middle mile, you seem to be in a priority area for one of the runs. How does that interface with your work?
The giant if. We love the map. Now, one of our brothers is not as happy with the map because they're duplicating a bit. But the middle mile project is project number 2, it's Highway 36, which would connect to the end of our fiber optic line and then run along 36 into the burned areas of the Dixie Fire, towns of Westwood and Chester, run down to Red Bluff in the Central Valley and I-5, which would be the main, I hate to call it the internet because that's technically not it, but there's multiple big carriers on I-5. So that would greatly help us. And especially if, the problem is with big maps and big round buffers is you can't quite see how far down it goes. It's like, does that stop at the end of the lake or does that go into the burned communities? So we have questions and we are working with various entities that are just getting their feet underneath them to find out when. And so that's a real puzzler at the moment. It's very, very hard to get into these areas because they're doing road repair and tree removal, and it's kind of brutal. And we have our own projects. So we're trying to figure out how can we leverage what the state is doing. What's on paper looks great. And will they do it in a fast enough manner is kind of the biggest question. And then can we finish building from the burned areas south and make a ring? Because again, geography is everything in the Sierra. And it's, where the railroads are where they are because they could, get a pass. I mean, it's can we make a ring? And that'd be very valuable for us. Because again, we've had 4 major fires in 2 years.
Unfortunately, you can expect that there will be more on the way. And yes, a ring would be great. The other thing is I do sort of wonder, they're not doing it in the United States yet in any sort of scale, but I feel like a relationship with Starlink might be useful to be able to turn on satellite in the low Earth orbit backhaul in the event of a disaster like that, to try to give you a little bit of an escape valve temporarily.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of them as a backhaul option. Interesting. We did lots, satellite's an interesting game. We had a lot of experience with Wild Blue, which ran great in the early going. And we went all in exactly when we shouldn't have.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, it had chip issues, and we expanded right when the wrong time. But problem with satellite is still always a fundamental. What you put up in the sky is what you get, and there's no fixing it. There's no adjust. Whatever you did when it was on the bird on the rocket, there it is. And what is good service now? We're going to go from a 50 by 10 package as a base package to 100 by 20, which we have a little higher package, to 250 by 100. And you can't do that with satellite. And the other issue with satellite is always the more you load it up, the more you're doing a shared resource. Where with fiber, did we say 10 gig cards? We meant 100 gig cards. All you got to do is change the cards out and you're off to the races.
Yep. Yeah, well, I definitely don't think that with the kind of usage you're talking about, you'd be able to to do it every day, but in the event of an emergency, I feel like anyway. I've talked with some of the folks from Starlink, and I know that they've tried to help emergency responders in emergencies with that. The fact that they can drop a few hundred megabits on places at low latency now, and anyway, it's just something I thought I'd throw out there and see if it crossed your radar screen.
Yeah, haven't yet, but interesting. Because we're looking at, even if it's still going to be 2-3 years before we get our ring done, and we're actually trying to do a snowman, a figure 8 configuration if we can pull it off, but that's some years away, because we are hoping these towns, building middle mile is not fast. Even if you're in the Caltrans right of way, it's not a fast process. Grants take time to apply for, et cetera. And we think both Starlink and then a local wireless company may be very good short-term solutions for everybody. Those towns, they may go back to DSL from the incumbent, but that's still going to be limited by copper and poor uploads and all that.
Last 2 questions. Are you in an area where you get snow by the foot? Is that something that happens in the mountains? That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. When we recruit linemen from the Dakotas and Minnesota, we say, it doesn't go below 0 much, and the snow falls straight down and stays there. And linemen are like, really? Where is this paradise you speak of? So, yes, we had after some bad droughts, we had a very, very good December. And then now we were having a nice dry January. Fingers crossed for February.
Excellent. Well, I wish you luck, and I want to end. We started off before we started recording in the green room talking a little bit about science fiction, and I'm curious if you have any recommendations of anything for a person you've never met, a person who's listening to this show right now.
I'll recommend an author as opposed to a book. The best author is Terry Pratchett, and it is absolutely. I consider him. My whole family considers him the modern Shakespeare. He passed in 2015, and my executive assistant looked in and saw me just sobbing and was like, are you okay? Did your mom die? It's like, no, Terry Pratchett passed away. So that is the easiest recommendation. On the internet has lots of recommendations on where to start, because he had a whole series of books, but it was about 3 or 4 in where he really hit his rhythm. So can't recommend it.
Yes, that's the whole Discworld universe. Wonderful. I've read more than half of them now. I'm a huge fan. Good Omens, just tremendous book, hilarious book. Let me recommend. I don't know if you have anything by Daniel Suarez. He's one of my favorite contemporary kind of like near future science fiction. His most recent one is Delta V. It's about mining asteroids. And the sequel should be out soon, I'm really hoping. And I'm a huge fan. Everything that he's written, I think, is brilliant, except for Influx, which is just a bad book. So anything except for Influx, I was not impressed with. But yeah, it's interesting, from biotech to asteroids to just sort of like more AI type stuff. It's a lot of good stuff. He's a Fortune 500 security consultant, so he's not someone who's too far out of line of what's realistic, and very enjoyable.
Oh, good. It is like, I've got to have an endless stream of books, or I'll go out of my gourd.
Yes.
So, or as you said, we chatted earlier about or you can always pepper in an old Terry Pratchett. I mean, we have reordered almost everything in paperback at least twice, because every person has read it and they just start falling apart. Yep.
I keep an eye out anytime any of them are on sale on Kindle. I immediately grab them.
Yep. Yeah, good.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. It's a wonderful conversation.
No problem. It was a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @muninetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Hughesby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.